Modern wars are not only fought on the battlefield, they are also fought through information and perception. Russia has repeatedly claimed that it destroyed what it calls NATO ammunition depots inside Ukraine. Meanwhile, Western media cover the same events, but with far more careful wording. So here's the big question. Does NATO actually have ammunition depots in Ukraine, or is this simply a matter of narrative designed to shape global opinion? To understand this issue, we first need to look at Ukraine's own defense industry. Since the conflict began in Donbass back in 2014, Ukraine's capacity to manufacture modern weapons has steadily declined. Supply chains were broken, large factories shut down, and strategic programs such as Antonov aircraft or long-range missile systems were no longer fully operational. After 2022, the situation became even worse. Industrial facilities were repeatedly targeted. Ukraine lost much of its independent ability to produce advanced weapons. At that point, Western companies stepped in. Rheinmetall from Germany began building ammunition plants. BAE Systems from the UK opened an office in Kyiv. Baykar from Turkey moved forward with plans to manufacture Bayraktar drones in Ukraine. And even the Hrim-2 ballistic missile project, often presented as a Ukrainian achievement, appears to rely on foreign funding and technical assistance. The result? On paper, these facilities belong to Ukraine. But in reality, Ukraine's military industry today is heavily propped up, and in some cases, operated by Western partners. This is exactly why Russia refers to them as NATO depots. Moscow consistently announces that its missile strikes have destroyed NATO's logistics hubs. Examples include Iskander and KH-101 strikes, which Russia says eliminated hundreds of tons of ammunition. Large aerial bombs like the FAB-1500 and FAB-3000, reportedly flattening major storage sites in the east. On August 14, 2025, Russia declared that it had struck missile plants in Dnipropetrovsk and Sumy. It also claimed to have destroyed Patriot air defense systems stationed there. Just a week later, on August 21st and 22nd, Russia launched its biggest aerial assault of the month. Hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles targeted western Ukraine. One of the main sites was the American-owned Flex Electronics plant in Mukachevo. Russia called it military infrastructure. Ukraine insisted it was a civilian facility. From Russia's perspective, every one of these sites is more than Ukrainian. They are NATO assets placed inside Ukraine. So how does Western media report these events? Not by ignoring them, but by framing them differently. Reuters, BBC, and The Guardian all follow the same formula. Russia claims. This wording matters. It emphasizes that the report is a claim, not an independently verified fact. They also carefully describe these sites as Ukrainian facilities storing Western-supplied weapons, not NATO depots. It's a subtle choice of words, but it reshapes how the world perceives the same event. And what about Ukraine? Kyiv almost never comments on these claims in detail. There is rarely confirmation of which depots were hit, how much ammunition was lost, or which facilities were damaged. This silence is not accidental. It serves several purposes: to maintain operational security, to protect public morale at home, and to preserve international support from partners abroad. But this silence also raises questions. Are the losses far greater than what is publicly admitted? And is Ukraine deliberately hiding the scale of damage to maintain the narrative of resilience? At this point, we can clearly see two competing versions of reality. Russia says every depot with Western weapons is a NATO depot. The West says these depots belong to Ukraine, even if the weapons come from NATO countries. The reality? Ukraine's infrastructure is now so dependent on Western supply that Russia's framing is not entirely false, even if it is not legally accurate. Let's look at this critically. NATO has no official bases or depots inside Ukraine, but the depots Russia targets are full of NATO-supplied weapons. Ukraine's defense industry is no longer independent. Russia calls them NATO depots to stress escalation. The West avoids that label to prevent the impression of direct NATO involvement. So, in functional terms, Russia is indeed striking Western assets inside Ukraine, even though legally NATO insists these are still Ukrainian facilities. This entire debate shows how modern war is fought with more than missiles and drones. It is also fought with words. Russia wants the world to believe it is fighting NATO. The West wants the world to believe it is only supporting Ukraine. And Ukraine itself remains silent, protecting secrets, morale, and foreign support. The reality is this: Ukraine's military production no longer stands on its own. It is heavily propped up, supplied, and in some cases operated by Western partners. So, does NATO have depots in Ukraine? Legally, no. Functionally, yes, in many ways. And that is why the line between fact, claim, and propaganda is now almost impossible to separate. In this war, whoever controls the narrative also controls the perception of truth.